And people are afraid that number 3 World War is coming. So what is your thought is more likely will be to negotiate, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think he can get what he wants. If he won't get the whole of Ukraine. That is not going to be on the table.
Trump is unpredictable. Now we have on arena the same characters, right? Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to see all of you guys. And of course, our guest, Simon Treselyan. Hello, Simon.
Hey, Elena, how are you?
I'm good. And everybody is right now occupied with a lot of thoughts and with a lot of fears, even more than we experienced a couple of years before today. So today I would love to discuss a couple of things. Since we are dealing with reality and now we have no other choice like react on what already happened, and if we will figure it out what's going on right now, then we will know what we can do in the future. So we have Trump, who is winner, and in my next video I will show you whole explanation why I was sure that he will be the one. And it is, I'm using only as example to prove for everybody that if you will look around on certain signs, you will predict the future. So today, I would love to ask Simon, because he is the warrior and he is a specialist on the war. And it looks like we are facing one of them, which has been setting up for many, many years. And people are afraid that number 3 World War is coming. So what is your thought? And do you see any signs? And it is that it is going to happen, or what you give us, can you give us some hope that it will not happen, and why?
Well, what I can say for pretty much certainty is that there is not going to be a third world war as people perceive it. If they perceive that it was a war like the Second World War, which involved both the European theater, the Atlantic theater, and the Pacific theater, it covered most of the globe apart from North and South America. So that's not going to happen. We do have 3 conflicts that are happening now. Now, these 3 conflicts have all come in one time frame, and that is the Biden presidency. So when Trump was in power before, there were no wars, only other wars no wars. Well, that's wrong. No wars were started. Okay, so there was military action in obviously Iraq and Afghanistan, which still goes on to this day. Not so much in Afghanistan after the withdrawal. But the reason I believe that no wars began, we didn't have problems with North Korea, we didn't have problems with China, we didn't have problems in the Ukraine, and we didn't have problems in the Middle East. And the reason for that is that Trump is so unpredictable. And foreign leaders know this. They know that he is not a normal establishment person. Therefore, he's not coerced by the establishment needs and the globalist needs. So he's his own person. And because he is, highly strung and totally unpredictable, is that no one wants to start a war. As soon as Biden got in and they saw what happened with the Afghanistan withdrawal, which was an absolute disaster for the Americans, at that point, everybody else that had beef with us decided that they would try it on. So at that point, almost as soon as Biden got in, China said, right, we're going to go for Taiwan. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? The Middle East started kicking off, with Hamas and with Hezbollah. And Putin was emboldened by that to go into Ukraine. He thought that the Americans wouldn't react and that it would just be a done deal. They'd go in 3 days, Kiev gone, and then put in a puppet government.
It looks like that Putin, he is unpredictable person, and Trump is unpredictable. Now we have on arena the same characters, right?
I would actually argue that Putin is actually very predictable. Okay, we know exactly what he wants. He's made that very clear. He's upset that the Soviet Union folded in the way that it did, and he's made it his mission since that time to actually try and regain the Soviet Empire, as he calls it. He knows that Ukraine used to be a part of that, but he also saw that Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, all of those countries which are now NATO countries, they were part of the old Soviet Union, and he wants them back. He wants his legacy to be that he is the person that rebuilt Russia. Yeah. And he sees Gorbachev as the one that took down Russia. So I think Putin is incredibly predictable. And as soon as we showed any form of weakness, and by we, I mean the West, as soon as we showed that weakness, and I do think Putin has a point in regards to the corruption in Ukraine. That was seen during the Biden, well, that was actually seen during the Obama presidency, of course, where Biden very famously, had the problem with Burisma, with his son actually being involved in Burisma. So there is a lot of history there. Now, I think that Putin saw the writing on the wall, and as soon as he saw weakness in the American system, he decided to go in there, create a buffer zone, and just to make himself feel better that at least NATO would have to come all the way through Ukraine to be able to get to Russia. So that's what I believe his goal was. And I think he was emboldened by the 8 years of war, essentially, that Ukraine had in the Donbass, because, as you know yourself, that is heavily Russian. They see themselves as Russian. It's only really in my lifetime, I know a lot of the Soviet officers that I was looking at from an intelligence point of view, they were largely Ukrainians. But even people within the KGB, GRU, they were Ukrainians, and they were actually always seen as very loyal to the Soviet Union, and they were put into very high places within the Soviet army. So, I was really surprised actually with the way that Ukraine went. But when Putin went in, I believe that we saw what he did in 2014. He took the Crimea. That was a strategic plan because he needed warm water ports. Okay, and this is something we can come back to because this is really,
Because
really
he wanted what?
Warm water ports. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So Russia only has 2 ports, or 3 ports really. It has the Black Sea, which is really limited because it's controlled by Turkey. Okay, so they're not allowed to put any more ships into the Black Sea. And this is why when the Ukraine is knocking them down, they're not being replaced. So that's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. The other port is in Kaliningrad, which is surrounded now by NATO. Okay, it's surrounded by Poland on one side, and then it's got Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia on the other. And then across the pond from there, they've got Sweden and Finland looking at them. So that is strategically, that's the only way they can get out into the North Sea. Okay, so that's their North Sea fleet. And if Kaliningrad falls, that's it. Most of the Russian Navy is gone. The other one that they have is in Kamchatka, right in the other way. That's the Pacific Fleet. But that is actually claimed still by China. Okay, so China still has an absolute claim over that land. And if anything happens between China and Russia, China will walk in and take that. And that means that the Russians don't have a navy anymore. And they'll be a landlocked country. So Putin is playing a very, very strategic game. Now, once Zelensky got in, and people, they try and paint him as a hero, but the fact is he is in charge of one of the most corrupt governments in Europe, bar none. And this is why Putin has used this as a reason to keep on going, claiming that he was trying to wipe out the Nazis and all this other stuff. Now, what I think is going to happen now, Trump has made it very clear that he will end the war on day one. Now, how can he do that? Well, the first thing he can do is cut off the money supply. If you cut off the money supply and the weapons to Ukraine, they're gone. I mean, that would embolden Russia, and Russia would either press through the attack and take out the whole of Ukraine, or what I think is going to happen is that Trump is going to say this to Putin, and almost word for word. He will say, right, on day one, we're going to cut off funds to Ukraine, but you are not allowed to go any further into Ukraine from where you are. I think that what will happen at that point, and the reason that Ukraine went into Kursk, is that they've got something to bargain with. Okay, so I think what will happen is that they'll say the Donbass, Luhansk and Donetsk, they are largely Russian anyway. We don't want to continue the war. Let them have it, right? Let Russia have those two provinces. And we will give you back Kursk if you give us back Crimea. Crimea has been shown that it's indefensible. Russia cannot defend Crimea. They cannot defend the Kerch Bridge. So I think that is going to be the deal that Trump will put to Putin and say, in this way, you get to look good because you said you went in as a special military operation to relieve the Donbass. That's what you said. So now you've achieved that aim. You go away with Kursk back, all of your borders secure, and you get the Donbass. That means that Putin would have actually achieved all of his aims. It also achieves the aims of Zelensky, because he gets to keep some part of his country, and he gets Crimea back. So that would be, to me, the best deal for everybody.
Do they know that?
Well, they will if they watch this video.
Exactly. So somebody please send it to people who can.
Yeah. But that's what I think. When Trump says he'll end the war on day one, that is what he's saying. Almost guarantee it. Because what that would do is that it would stop Russian expansion. It means that they won't go into Moldova at that point, because that was the original plan. It was to take out Odessa and then move into Moldova through the Russian conclave there, as part of Moldova.
What if they want to go to Moldova? What if they will do that?
Not at the present time, because it means that they would have to invade Odessa, and all of the landing ships that Russia had that were set for that invasion are now all sunk. They're all gone. So Ukraine sunk all of those ships that were going to land all of the troops and the tanks in Odessa. So that ability is now cut off for them.
Okay, it sounds good, but what do you say about Daily Mail? It was yesterday. The Pentagon plans to launch hypersonic nuclear missile, and they are hoping that it will start as soon as our vote polls will be closed in America.
Yeah.
And after that, they can send the nuclear bombs just to test, to see how it works. Because it's right now, the article notes that the missiles is capable of reaching Moscow or Beijing.
Have one as well. The Russians have one called the Kinzhal. Okay, so the Kinzhal is a hypersonic missile. Hypersonic missiles are very, very difficult to shoot down. But actually, in Ukraine, they've been shooting down.
Say it again.
It's a Kinzhal missile. Okay, so it's a hypersonic missile. It's very hard to shoot it down because it's so fast. Okay, so normally a hypersonic missile goes faster than the missiles that are trying to take it down. Yeah, so they outrun them. But what has been shown is that all the Kinzhal missiles, they're very old-fashioned for the Russians. They try and hype them as being, really new, but actually Patriot missiles have shot them down. Now the American version, the new one, I think it's called the THAAD or something like that. That is a totally new technology. It is head and shoulders above the Kinzhal. Now, when you say a nuclear missile, what they mean is a nuclear capable missile. Okay, which means
what does it mean? What's the difference?
So it's a nuclear capable missile. It means that it's a missile that you could put a nuclear warhead in, or you can have a conventional one, or you could have a chemical one. Okay, so the warhead changes. So it's not just built for nuclear weapons. And of course, Russia's been using these for a long time, but they haven't put any nuclear warheads on them. And there's probably a reason for that as well, because no one has ever in the history of man launched a missile with a nuclear warhead on it, and that warhead has then exploded. Okay, so it's unlikely to happen.
So the reason for this article is to put a fear, right?
Yeah, Absolutely. Because in the same way, a couple of years ago, the Russians put out that they had a nuclear capable torpedo. And that so the submarines are undetectable. They could get very close to the US, fire this torpedo with a nuclear warhead on it, and take out New York before we even know it. Because everyone is looking in the sky for nuclear capable missiles and ballistic missiles, ICBMs. So that's what they're looking for. So you can't detect a submarine. So that was another big fear. And then they found out that it didn't really work anyway. So everything that they put out is to gauge public opinion, to create fear, and then create a reaction. Okay, so and this is something I was just about to do a TikTok video on. And it's basically problem, problem reaction solution. So what they do is that they know what solution that they want. They then create a problem, and then they wait for the reaction before bringing in the solution that they've already planned. Okay, so that's really what it's all going to be all about. So I think that there is a lot of what they call hawks in the American government that are globalist. They want the Ukraine war to go on, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, that it gives them a lot of money, okay, because they then get the money from the taxpayer to buy the weapons, but they don't buy new weapons. What they do is that America gives the old weapons to Ukraine and then restocks. Yeah, perfect. It's a perfect thing. It's like you're giving away the bread that's about to go off.
Fire, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one thing, and of course it means that everyone in Congress gets a clip of that ticket. So every time money goes out, they get money from the munitions company. So they're lining their own pockets. It's what we call the gravy train. So they want the gravy train to continue, keep on pushing out taxpayer money, keep on taking your 1-2%, and everybody's happy. War is good for business. Yeah,
it's a wonderful system, cashback.
Yeah. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that while there is a war in Ukraine and it's sucking up Russian forces, it's a thing called what we call in the military attrition. Okay, so it means that NATO is not fighting against Russia, but Russia, who could be fighting against NATO, is losing troops and equipment. And we're getting to see how bad the actual Russian chain of command is.
They exhaust on other side in order to make them weak.
Yeah, I mean, already Russia has lost, they reckon, over a third of its tank force. That means that, and as we've seen, if Russia can't take even a small part of Ukraine, then how could they even try to go into Poland, Germany, Finland, Sweden, France, Italy? I mean, UK, I mean, they're not. They're simply not. And that's why I say there will be no Third World War. Original Russian plans of trying to retake the old Soviet Union will fail. Poland itself is now an army that could take on Russia and probably beat them. They're much bigger than the Ukraine, with much more modern weapons.
Are you underestimate, or what is your thought on inside power? For example, in the war, if somebody is given not right direction, and this is actually what happened, they don't have enough information, proper information, and guys been killed for no reason. So do you believe if they from inside can destroy whole plans? And it looks like, oh, we're just losing troops, but we cannot, for example, get any farther in Ukraine because inside those commanders, they do their job.
Yeah, and I mean on the positive side, if you look at from Putin's point of view, I mean, unfortunately he lost a lot of his really good troops early on. He
On
put the
both
whole
sides, they lost.
Yeah, but they lost, because the Ukrainians lost the right-wing regiment, I forget what they were called now. But the airborne troops, which are the cream of the Russian army, tried to take Kiev and they got wiped out. So that that took out all of their elite troops. and they lost a lot of Spetsnaz and things like this, which are the special forces. So what they've got now is an army of very, very new conscripts. But what they did do is empty out all the prisons. So now they put all their prisoners into the front line and got them all killed. So from Putin's point of view, who doesn't care about the people, what he's done is that he has weakened all of the ethnic states in Russia. So the Russians that are going to the front line are not white Russians. They're not your Muscovites. They are being drawn, from the Mongols, from the Uyghurs, from all of the ethnic groups, and they're promising them money which they'll never see in their places, and they put them into the front line. So they're soaking up the ammunition of the Ukrainians. And as we saw this with Chechnya as well, he used Kadyrov and all of his Chechens, and they got pretty much wiped out within 10 days. And they threw the Chechens into Bakhmut, which was like a meat grinder. I mean, just to take one city, hundreds of thousands of troops died on both sides. So in that way, I think Putin is running out of troops. A lot of young males, a lot of educated Russian males have left the country.
Is more likely will be to negotiate, right?
Yeah. I think he can get what he wants. If he won't get the whole of Ukraine. That is not going to be on the table at all. So what I think that will do is that part of the deal is that Ukraine will not join NATO. I think that's going to be a major stipulation because he doesn't want NATO missiles closer to Russia. That isn't going to fly. But what I do think is that they might say, right, we want to, that Ukraine will keep its army as a defense force. But it will not be allowed to join NATO, but I think it will be allowed to join the EU. Now, if they can allow, if both sides agree that Ukraine can be part of the EU, it means that Ukraine can then sell grain to Russia, can create the grain for Europe, which means that all your bread and costs are going to go down, but it also means that Russia will be able to pump oil and gas again because all the pipelines went through Ukraine initially before they then did the one, is it Nord Stream, which got blown up. So that's another carrot to give to Putin and to say, look, you can start turning the taps back on because especially now it's getting into winter, Germany is going to freeze if it doesn't get Russian gas. Because they don't produce their own. It's a problem. And this is what Trump said. He said, strategically, it is the wrong thing. You can't depend on your energy needs from your enemies. I mean, exactly. And we've seen this in the Middle East. Why should we be dependent on oil from the Middle East when we're going to be going to war in the Middle East? And this is why Trump is really, really keen on opening up the floodgates to energy, because we are the biggest producer of oil and gas in the world, bar none. And under the Trump presidency, we were energy independent. Now we're not. Now we're asking people like Venezuela, to give us oil. So I think that is going to be that's going to be what I think he's going to offer Putin. So strategically, it makes a lot of sense.
So what do you think about other theory? What if behind the scene something is going on which is not obvious for us, and owners, I would say, or people who are telling what to do on both parties, they have own game. So
Yes.
What about that?
Everyone's got an agenda, and again, I think it's telling. All you got to do is just watch the news and join the dots. And most people just watch the news, but they don't join the dots. So the first foreign leader to talk to Trump was Netanyahu. It's not because they're friends. I think Trump has threatened Netanyahu, and because he said, day one, you get your act together. I need you to stop the war in Hamas. I need you to stop the war in Lebanon. Now, in order to do that, there needs to be some degree of security. So what I think is going to happen is that they will not allow Hamas to remain, and they will not allow Hamas to rearm. I think that Israel is going to stay as as an overseeing force, not an occupying force, but an overseeing what they call a transit government, a transitory government. I think that what they'll do is they'll spend a lot of money, and America will give them a lot of money to rebuild Gaza. That's what I think. And I think that they're going to do to Gaza what they should have done in the first place. So there's a lot of money, something like 40 million a day goes into Gaza, but it goes into weapons and tunnels. Okay, so if you took that away and put it into schools and hospitals and factories and ports, it doesn't even have its own port. You know, it's on the Mediterranean. It's some of the most beautiful beaches known to man. It should have the best tourist industry in the world, bar none. And that can happen. You've got enough people to do it. Imagine that you could actually build Gaza and give it a good education, good universities, good schools and hospitals, no military. Yeah, and by that I mean no Israeli military either. They can protect their own borders, but to have a government to make sure that the money is spent wisely, create a port, create hotels, and then you've got a whole industry, you know, and then everyone gets a job. And then you'll see the prosperity of Gaza going remarkably well. And that is going to be the flagship for the Palestinian people, which they think that, you know, they do need a place. They need a place to call home. And they don't have a claim on it. They simply don't, because they can't. Most of the Palestinian families that you're aware of originally came from Jordan, you know, and not so long ago. So they haven't been there for thousands of years like the Jews. In Lebanon, they're going to have to crush, and they probably have crushed, Hezbollah, but I think that Israel will demand an exclusion zone, and they already have an exclusion zone. That's why the UN are there, but the UN don't do anything. The UN has not stopped Hezbollah in that area, and that's what their job is. Their job is to demilitarize southern Lebanon, and they haven't done it. Their job, and this is what I think you're going to find in other aspects as well, is that America is going to become more isolationist now. We're going to withdraw from, and we may withdraw from NATO. I mean, NATO is big enough to look after itself. It's the largest alliance in the world. If America just stopped being the big boy in NATO, I mean, you've got the UK, nuclear power. You know, you've got Italy, a nuclear power. You've got France, a nuclear power. You've got Germany, Poland, Bulgaria, you know, I mean, Finland, Sweden. I mean, they got 28 countries. They can look after themselves. And I think that's going to be the argument, because at the moment, you know, the US pays for something like 60 or 70% of NATO's bills. So I think that America would rather take that money and put it into their own defenses. So I think there's going to be a withdrawal from that. There's definitely going to be a withdrawal from the World Health Organization, definitely from the Paris Accords, and definitely from the UN. I think they may even ask the UN to leave American soil, you know, in New York, because the UN has been shown to be useless. It's been useless in Gaza. It's been useless in Lebanon. You know, it's been useless in the Middle East. I mean, where has it ever been useful? Never, ever. So, you know, that's what I think is largely going to happen. So you're going to see a much more isolationist policy. I think that North Korea will draw its neck back in. I think China will see that the writing is on the wall, and they will actually stop saber rattling in Taiwan, because, again, that's another place of potential conflict. Now, the problem with Taiwan is that you have to cross the sea to get there. And to cross the sea with an army, you have to have ships to carry that army. And China can only carry 40,000 troops. That's it, with all its ships. So you're not going to take Taiwan with 40,000 troops at all. As soon as you land on the beach, you're going to lose 80% of them. Okay, so because the beaches are so well fortified. So whatever troops actually eventually get to the beaches, they're just going to be massacred. And China knows that. The only way China is actually going to beat Taiwan is with a blockade. Now let's go to Iran, which is the other problem child in the Middle East. They've been happy to work their proxies. You know, Hamas, Houthi, Lebanon. Houthis now have been largely destroyed, both by the US and the UK. And they've done that not on behalf of Israel, but on behalf of world shipping. So the Houthis are not going to be able to do much. Hamas is now gone. Hezbollah is now gone. So Iran has had to resort to, if it wants to have a go at Israel, it has to go do it from its own country. And as we saw what that happened then, twice now they've sent over 100 rockets, and missiles. They haven't been successful. And then Israel just showed that they could bomb anywhere they wanted, whenever they wanted. And I think they were very restrained in doing that. They won't be restrained next time. And Iran knows that. And Iran obviously has a beef with Trump. Yeah, as we know, they tried to get him assassinated. And we know there was election interference on behalf of Kamala Harris. It's not her fault. But that's why Iranians didn't want Trump back in, because they know he's unstable, and they know that he could just wake up in the morning like he did with Solomon, the head of the IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and said nuke him, take him out, and they did. And it just shows that we can actually take out their leadership when and wherever we want, and so can Israel. And I think Iran will know that, and if it wants to remain in power, if the regime is very fragile, if it wants to remain in power, it needs to keep pumping oil, and it needs to stop creating wars.
What about the chances from 1 to 10 of third world? What is your prediction?
I'd say it's a 1 or a 2.
Oh,
Not going to
okay.
happen.
Very small. Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Regional wars, perhaps. Okay, and we've already seen this. There is a regional war in Middle East right now. It's just not as big as it could be. There is no war in China. It's a threat. There is a war in Ukraine, but it doesn't include us. All we're doing is paying for it. So there is no way that America is actually going to get into a war. If China attacks Taiwan, yes, but that'll be a regional war. It won't be a world war.
Okay, could you explain for people who are right now crying that Democrats are lost, what did we avoid it by choosing red?
Well, see, the thing is, and we've seen this. I mean, apart from Bush, who was a bit of a warmonger, most of the time, it is that the Democratic Party have been involved in starting most of the wars, and that's not because they're evil people. It's just that the people behind them are the military-industrial complex. Okay, and they make money out of war. Is great business. I mean, the World Bank sponsored Adolf Hitler before the Second World War, and then when it kicked off, then they sponsored, the same bank sponsored the Lend-Lease agreement, which gave money to UK and to Russia to fight Nazi Germany. Same bank, so they're making money on both sides. And then after the war, they created a thing called the Marshall Plan under the Americans, which rebuilt Germany. Same bank. So they started a war, got money on that, carried on the war, finished the war, got money on that, and then built up the countries after the war, got money on that as well. So that's what, and then as you see with every conflict, whether it be Libya, whether it be Lebanon, whether it be Iraq, the first day is that the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank come in, give them a central bank, give them a massive loan, which they're never going to get back. And what do? They take the country's resources. This is why Libya, you don't hear about Libya being an oil producer anymore. It was a huge oil producer under Gaddafi. Since they got rid of Gaddafi, they stole the oil. They put up a puppet regime. They did the same thing everywhere. They wanted to do the same in Syria under Obama, but that never came about. So that's what happens. It all comes down to money. All comes down to money, and it all comes down to central banks. And there's only 3 countries in the world that do not have a central bank. And guess where they are? North Korea, Iran, and Syria.
Wow.
Those are the only 3 countries that have a central bank. So you can join the dots. Now you can understand why they want wars.
Exactly.
You guarantee that if we took out North Korea, day one, they would have a central bank, and they would owe to the IMF for the rest of their lives.
So what is main assumption for today? and hope?
I think it's pretty much as I've said. That's what I think will happen. Unless people try and do something weird between now and January, which they could, but
Yeah.
their options are small because the Republicans run Congress, and Congress holds the purse strings. Okay, so you can't fight a war without actually Congress declaring war. As a president, you can't do that. So I think that they may still do another payout to Ukraine before January, but come January, everything changes. Everything changes. And I think you'll see an end to the war in Ukraine. I think that you'll see peace breaking out all over the Middle East. And you'll see China reined in, because if we stopped fuel going into China, they've got 30 days. They've got 30 days of reserves, because they don't make their own fuel. They import, I think it's 80 or 90% of their own fuel, and they do it by ship. That's it. All you have to do is blockade the South China Sea. That's why China wants it so much, so and their population. I mean, China as we know it will be gone by 2040, because they have an aging population. Something like 70% of their populace is 55 and over. So it's because of the one-child policy. They simply have got too many people, but they're too many old people. And as medical science gets better, they're living older and longer, and they're having to be propped up by the government. But there's no young people coming in to make the money to pay for their medical. And
But you know what? They will still be on this earth because they do qigong, they eat right, they
well,
meditate.
yeah, but the communist regime, which is backed up that, I think China will be a failed state by 2040. You'll see, and you'll see it. What will happen is that this is why they created these things called special autonomous regions, SARs. So Hong Kong will become independent. So will Shanghai. So will Macau. So will Tibet. So will the Uyghur territories. The Mongol territories, and it will go back. If you look at a map and see where the original Han Chinese were, that is what China will shrink to, because the Han clan is the biggest ethnic group in China, but it's about a third of the country.
Tibet will be forever, it looks like, because as you know, a lot of expedition went there, and they open up a lot of things, which is proof that Tibet is a special place.
Oh, it's a very special place. And of course, the Dalai Lama is still the supposed head of state, but he's not in Tibet, So, China still runs it with an iron hand. and I feel that once China starts to get weaker, there will be a massive push by the international community to free Tibet and reinstall the Dalai Lama. I perceive that will probably happen in my lifetime. So they haven't got long.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So
Yeah.
basically, the message for the civil people, what will be?
I think that there should be a lot of hope. I've heard all of the commentators all bleating about, we're plummeting into World War III, and it's all doom and gloom, and we got all of these problems in the world. I think all of those problems in the world can be stopped with one simple thing, and that is just diplomacy, treating people the opposite side with respect and not hate, and just working a deal. And this is what you've got, I think, with Trump, is that he's a deal maker above all. He's a businessman. He understands business. He understands people's motivation. He understands that you have to give people what they want in order to get what you want. And that is the basis of sales. It is the basis of relationships, and it's the basis of politics. It just hasn't been used that way. What we've done is we've got into this political game of anyone that doesn't agree with you is actually evil, is actually Satan, and it's ridiculous. We're
So this
allowed
is the problem. People are right now afraid how much evil we will have in this election right now.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot, and people have believed the media. and now they're believing it less. I think there's a lot of people going to be out of jobs, both in the media and certainly pollsters, because we were fed a lot of lies throughout the last 3 months. It's all been lies. Oh, it's a close election. It's this, it's that. No, it wasn't. It was never going to be that. And all the people that were told that they were going to be demonized, put in camps or whatever, are the people that actually voted for the other side, black males and Hispanics. You can't put a progressive agenda into Hispanics and think that it's going to work. Hispanics are very religious. They're very family oriented. So you can't tell them that it's, the whole trans agenda, the LGBTQ, the anti-religion, that doesn't fly with them at all. So you can get them across the border, you can give them hotels, you can give them mobile phones and money, but you can't change their values. You can't buy their values. They're proud people. And you try telling a black man what to do. The last time people tried that, they were called slave owners. And Obama and Michelle Obama stood up and told them that they were wrong. Wow. Biggest misstep in political history. Because he spoke like he was asking them to pick cotton. Bad move, And you don't think black men are strong? Watch the NFL, watch the NBA. You don't tell these people what to do. They're proud.
Nobody likes to be told what to do.
No, of course not. It's not. And that's what big government does. Big government tells people what to do, what to think, what to put into their children, what to drink, what books to read, what music to listen to.
That's why only one thing what civil people can do in every life to make the right choices and don't apply what they telling you what to do. That's all.
The central message, I think, is that you need to pay attention of what's going on, be aware of how people are reacting to that, and just be kind. Just know that it's not evil for someone else to have an opposing view. It's not,
Yeah, you just listen to that point of view and think maybe it is something what you can use.
Oh, and again, some people are never going to be convinced by an argument, and that's okay. But it's not okay when you start going, well, I'm going to go to war with you because of this, and we've been doing it as humans for far too long. We need to speak more, we need to be kind more, we need to be understanding more. And, I've been through wars. I spent 20 years doing that stuff. I know the misery that it brings. It brings nothing good, nothing, and when you think about all the people that lost their lives fighting against Nazi Germany, now the Germans are our friends. So what was all that about? We went to war with them twice. Millions of people died. Why? Now they're our friends. Britain went to war.
Isn't it funny? You're the person who in the war, you're the first one who is telling for everybody, be kind. And people who never been in the war, they acting like they're big shot.
A bullet wound, it changed my thoughts of life. You get a different perspective on what war really is when you stop watching it on TV and you're actually downrange from someone firing at you. That's a very different experience.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful message. Thank you for your time. It's a great information. I hope people will take it to an absolutely different level. Will start to think, value information, what they've been right now given on the platter, on the golden platter. We are not media. We are people who are talking amongst ourselves, and we just using the technology to deliver the message so that you would know that some people like you think certain way, and maybe we are like-minded. So I hope everything will be great, and everything depends really on us. When election is happening, it's like already finished point of something what already been prepared for many years. So think like this way. So now it's your time. Act during those years, because election, it will be up or gay already. So it's already too late. So it's already happened. So it depends on our act, on our reactions. So be good and have a wonderful and blessed day, and
You too.
next year, I hope.
Okay, take your care. Bye now.
Right.